mitesmastermind.com. So continuing on this idea of the CARES model as an experience experiment, and this follows my earlier talks. This is part two. I gave myself like a 15-minute break because I hit the half-hour mark on the other one, which is pretty rare. But yeah, if you're into it, hopefully you'll enjoy it and get something out of it. So it's MLK Day. It's supposed to be the day of service. It actually is Martin Luther King's birthday officially, since he was born on the 15th, 1930 something. Gee, I shouldn't just quote things out of my head. But because of the significance of it, my kids are home because they have a day off. And anyway, it's like bitter Arctic temperatures outside, way below zero. And it's also caucus day in Iowa. Good luck getting out of the house. So it's sort of like time for reflection a little bit, because I had just applied for this amazing job opportunity of a new community collective coming together to do action research. And I think it would be such a great contribution, perfect fit in the dimension of like, well, to make sort of the quantum leap here that we would change everything. So I did a little research as I could. There's not much about it because it's such a new opportunity. Post the job, and that job description is all that's available online anywhere on the college website or Googling it. No press releases, nothing that I could find. So to prepare and to get a little bit more information in advance of applying, I reached out to a few people, but I did it, I think, just before this Friday before the weekend. We had this blizzard. I don't think anybody was around to read emails. We had this holiday weekend happening. But anyway, I saw that the person who I would be reporting to, and they don't give the name, but the title, so then I could find who that was, is a really interesting person. European studies, really sort of geometry in a very deep sense, and I don't want to say more because it kind of gives it away who that would be, and that might taint, or, well, not that I'll publish this beforehand, and who knows what the chances are of even being considered or getting an interview. But, I want to protect people's, I never give anyone's name unless they've already said, hey, yeah, it's okay to reference me or talk about my work. But I found it pretty fascinating. It's like, well, we're talking about, engagement, which I just talked about in the CARES model before. This is my take on community-based action research, and I really want to study the quality of engagement. That's why I call it CARES, Community Action Research Engagement, because that quality of engagement can be enlightening, and it's the way that we show up and how we're present that has an effect, and I'm using the A letter word, not that we're causing anything to change in the community, but it allows for things to open up that are more revealing. For in the cause of being this community researcher, a social scientist, it's important that things become more revealing, and not necessarily from our point of view of judgment or our take on it. It's sort of like what shows up. It's sort of a revelation of some sort. And I write about this in my, as I referenced in the other talk, Weltschloss. Weltschloss is my two German words I put together that interpreted stand for world. Welt. Schloss, the Schloss, is the way that we're being present in the building, what we've built, this construction, but it's the quality of the dwelling. And having this sort of comprehension, I'm talking about comprehension, is where there's a coherence of the experience, and this is what I'm referring to as this engagement as a consciousness that's going to allow me to be present in such a way that I can deconstruct this built or sort of analyze it in such a way to get a sense of its structure and functionality that allows me to get the underpinnings of its workings. And for society and looking at structures, this can be really relevant if we're looking to create change. And what I thought was really quite compelling about the geometry type essence that this person, at least of course I haven't met this person, and just, a little bit of information on their bio. And of course, when you look at things from science, and particularly mathematics, it's pretty rigid in the sense that anything's going to be explained in the context of what it is, mathematics, right? Or geometry. But, that's pretty much a comprehension, I think, like, wow, that's what the person, it's part of what their curriculum is, what they're teaching. That's like their pet project or what they're fascinating about. For other people, it might be a hobby like playing card games. But this person's kind of wanting to understand, spatial geometry. And, I remember meeting one time who was called Pharaoh's architect, who's all he did was study spirals. He could interpret things in such a way that he could point them out in nature as well as what was found in the universe. So I think in this quantum sort of space, there could be, and I don't know what's underlying this person's interest and why they're sort of in charge of research in the college, they're a dean, that I would be sort of reporting to. There must be sort of, in my estimation, and of course it's a leap, it's a judgment and guess, and so I'm not attached to it because I haven't met the person, haven't been explored, and even me saying this could probably disqualify them. The person knows my secrets, or they're totally off base. It's like, wow, it's like, well, are we talking about an intelligent universe here that things sort of play out into spatial dynamics, which is what I'm interested in when I've just talked about previously in the metasphere, which is my term for social space, sort of the climate, sort of what we're sort of feeling in atmospheric terms. But what does that mean, atmosphere? We're talking about the stratosphere? So I give it a name, metasphere, because it's the metaphoric understanding of this sort of felt space between us. And it's a bit more intimate than this Weltschloss idea, which is more of the world that we're dwelling in, but it does correspond, obviously. And the universe dynamic, which I write about in MEST, M-E-S-T, which is just an acronym for matter, energy, space, and time. Matter, energy, space, and time, MEST. But if we look at MEST as a fabric that interplays in everything that is basically our physical physics, if you'd ask any physicist, what is there? Matter, energy, space, and time. This quantum aspect, then, how it plays out into sort of geometry, which is what I know nothing about, is very curious to me because there is something of a science now that looks at Euclidean or a type of elements that fit within a space, a relationship dynamic, and how things are configured by the space or distance we have between each other, our body language, and the way things are positioned, or what Dr. Judd would call colloidal sculpting, where we've sort of created this Weltschloss environment and what we come to understand it. And in my work in the Weltschloss dimension, I talk about the GEMS, G-E-M-S, which basically is sort of to get this comprehension of where we're at in the here and now in this Weltschloss dimension. And again, the acronym GEMS stands for GEMS. It's what's given to us, to have an understanding of what's already present and what we've associated to or labeled, and how we constructively or deconstructively interpret and use it and make it functional or dysfunctional. And the E really stands for environment, but I shortened it to environs because I look at something that's really in the betterment or cause of things to understand what the effect is. And the effect is kind of both ways. It's a two-way mirror. It's like how the environment is interpreted to us, affecting us, and then, of course, how we're affecting it. And those particular things, what I call environs. So G-E-M-S, the M, and of course I do not have the French pronunciation to what I call the milieu. The milieu has been written about for a long time in sociology, and it's sort of, this impact might be sort of the person's situation and what their experience is. And it could be the effects of the work, their class status, and their regard for things, but also in the interpretation of what's given to them and the environs, what that impact on that level is, and what they're experiencing in the milieu. And they may not be aware of it, but it is what they're dealing with. And the S on the GEMS and completion is creating the setting. And the setting is what I wish to understand, and what I talked about in the previous talk on my CARES model, which is community action, research, engagement, and having an enlightened sort of experiential exploration of what this setting is. And to get that big, broader picture, seems to be there's something really deep as a correlation to how things may play out. Now, whether we can make that quantum leap and call it an intelligent universe, something that's conscious, that's present, underlying behind these things, is something what I'm trying to get at and exploring Weltschloss, but really more for the interpretation of being a bit more aware and present, not only to my circumstances, but how I can more adroitly and masterfully be in the moment. And as I'm present to this allowingness would allow for things, theoretically, to open up in a free, safe, in a regarded way. It's like, oh, it's okay. So let's examine it, rather than just coming from judgment or avoiding it, or there's a disassociation that then itself has to be dealt with and becomes more of a disattraction, rather than resolving the complexity of the issue or the immediacy of what's present. So this appreciation study might have some kind of factors that I'm sure in some scientific brain has a mathematical correlation. Now, whether we ever get to that point, the curiosity is there because I've seen that there's some research that's begun in this regard. Now, whether it has its deep implications into a conscious consideration, I don't know. But that's where I'm at in studying this as a social scientist. And my pseudo-philosophy that I call ultra-being is sort of this examination of what it would be to ultra-being present. What is this being essence and ontological perspective? What's the potential of this? And it's been written about in psychology and philosophy, obviously. Abraham Maslow had in his humanistic psychology, right, the hierarchy and his sort of pyramid, hierarchy of needs, where at the bottom, desire to get out of struggle and, hardship and just being able to survive, to being able to thrive, the pinnacle peak of that pyramid that leads to transcendence is being self-actualized. And what would this potentiality be? So number one, how we understand it and then can apply it to ourselves. And then through this self-mastery, which is sort of being able to let go, to sort of have it all come together in this gem setting, right? What's given, the environs, and understanding, our conditions and circumstances. And from this platform, we have a setting. We're more able to structurally understand it, interpret it, and whole-brained deal with it in this, you could say, enlightened manner. But to understand this, or to get a sense of it, I think opens up a whole other dimension. That's sort of what is this potentiality once it's explored or endeavored. Not to say it's explored once, because it's something that's lived. And this mastery and the representation of what would be for this new conscious collective that I would be sort of considering this is examining the engagement and the quality of in which we are doing our community-based action research. And the CARE model is the examining of the quality of engagement. And that, I think, not only helps the researcher grow and become better at their craft, which is what action research is all about, perfecting the practice, right? Or learning, continuous learning that's ongoing. It just takes it to another level. In this dimension, maybe it's not discussed publicly yet because it's not quite adopted as part of the mainstay or thinking of the current moment, but it's something we're evolving towards. And this would be a conscious refinement in this understanding of how we can maximize this entity that is self-actualized, a community that's conscious, particularly in their conversations, and ultra-beingness of itself. What is this? Exploration of enlightenment. What is it? How do we define it? How's it lived for oneself and examined? I think it's fascinating. And that's what the CARES model and what I talked about in the previous talk is about. And just coming back to it, just come back to it in a way that sort of allows for the consideration in a deeper sense that there's potentially the space modality. What talks about what matters, the energetics, emotions, and that spatial relationship that then could be figured out in this metasphere that releases the tension and gives us the time and the interest and that quality of engagement that really becomes the gateway towards this goal of enlightenment, whatever it would mean for you. But just having it and experiencing it, whether you call it flow, being in state, or just having that aha or epiphany, and being able to extend it so it's sort of really a lived experience unto itself. And who knows what the possibilities are, right? And how this is lived and what it leads to. It's a goal. And that's what ultra being, the work is about. How we're being present. All right, MikeRatner.com, Mike'sMastermind.com, about half this length of this previous talk, but sort of something to come into the space of like, whoa, coming into the space, like, well, what are the geometrics? Wow, that's a whole nother level beyond my comprehension currently, but there is sort of a sense dynamic, which I talked about in the previous talk, right? And how we come into a space, if we have a syntax to sensation, what would it be? Check it out. All right, Mike'sMastermind.com. Hope you're having a great day of service yourself. Happy birthday in the way that we honor and really celebrate out of sort of the celebration aspect of a life well lived. How do we express it and give back? Oh. CommunityConversations.com, also worthwhile talking out and looking at the intimate atmosphere. LovingConversations.com. Thank you. So I'll be putting some of the CARES model research up at CommunityConversations.com or .org. Either one will take you to that website right now. It may be a specialized website for training and community building and having some best practices input from other experts in the field if they are at communitystudies.org, where we'd be an organization of people, and researchers and teachers, instructors, exploring the world of community, communitystudies.org, which I'll be putting up sometime this week. Thank you.